back to the Adventures with Coolwulfes, where we go on adventures together. My name is Jessica, your friendly casual gamer, book dragon, and cozy activity lover. So grab your favorite blanket, settle in, and let's dive into my review, the first one on this channel, of the book Babel by RF Kuang. This is my first time doing a book review, so any suggestions, feel free to leave it in the comments. I picked this book up from my local bookstore sales bin. I recognize the author RF Kuang because I have her Poppy War series on my TBR list. I will like to preface that this video will contain spoilers. So if you haven't read it and you just want to know if I recommend it, shoot to the end and I'll timestamp it in the description. Let's start with a quick synopsis. Well, as quick as a 500-page book can be. I titled this video, I Read Babel, so you wouldn't have to, for a reason. Babel is set in the 1800s, kind of like an alternate universe, because they use silver bars with words imprinted on them as their form of technology. I feel like I should give a brief description of the magic in this world before delving into the characters. These silver bars can make explosions, heal people, clean water, even alarm clocks. If you have what's called a match pair on the silver bar, that's how it works. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure I fully understand how it works because the whole book really tries to drive home that there's no direct translation of the word, but translators are trying to translate the context of the subject at hand. But what I did grasp is that the silver requires a fluent speaker of the languages engraved upon it to work. So, translators are necessary to work the magic. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but the best way for me to describe how I interpreted the use of silver is, depending on where the silver comes from, is dependent on the speaker. So if the silver comes from Canton, the bar must have a Cantonese word engraved upon it, and on the other side, an English word, because that's where or who the silver will be used by. In this world, England has a monopoly on silver and translators, creating a power divide between them and the other countries of the world. The story follows Robin Swift, who is a Cantonese child who gets sponsored by a British man, Professor Lavelle. Lavelle? I think we'll pronounce it Lavelle, that sounds cooler. Anyway, he works at Oxford, specifically the language translation hub known as Babel. Robin is given the choice to have Professor Lavelle sponsor him and give him a way of life in Britain if Robin commits his life to learning language translation, to ultimately make silver with the Chinese Cantonese language. It's a gripping tale set in a world where obviously words hold immense power, and because of this, I believe that's why the first half of the book doesn't spend a ton of time giving us story like action, drama, all the things, but more context of the world and the intricacies of language that Robin has to learn, which, I'll be honest, had me feeling like a scholar sometimes and maybe even a college student reading a textbook for class. It was a struggle to get through that first half. I had to force myself to push through because it was a lot of translation and language knowledge being thrown at me. But hey, learning is a plus, right? This half of the book also sets up a rebel group called the Hermes Society, where Robin's older brother, Griffin, finds and recruits him to help steal silver and copy pages of Grammatica from Babel in order to help countries try to take a stand against England's imperialistic takeover of the world. This team up with Hermes doesn't last very long before Robin got shot during a silver supply run. At that point, he has a falling out with Griffin and the Hermes Society, bringing us to the second half of the book. At this point, let's touch base on the friend group that Robin has, which are Raimi, Victor, and Letty. All of them represent some sort of minority group, being their race, gender, that Britain has taken over, essentially. Remember, Britain takes over these countries to get trade on silver, so they ultimately have more power in the world. But to use the silver, they need translators. So who better to translate than the people from those countries? During their time at Oxford, the girls, Victor and Letty, are told to dress as male, so not to interfere with the male students and their studies. The author also shows us that Raimi and Robin are not being served in certain restaurants and facilities due to their race. they all sort of bond with the fact that they are all minorities and are treated as such everywhere in the school but Babel. Well, not as prevalent racism and sexism in Babel, I should say. The author doesn't go into much detail on the friends' thoughts or feelings. She kind of keeps everything in the perspective of Robin, who is very introverted in a way. So he doesn't ask his friends what they're feeling or what they're thinking all the time. He just kind of goes along or just blatantly ignores and doesn't even want to touch it. So there's a lot of times where the author will state they went out together and bonded, but they didn't actually show how or why. I've seen this being kind of picked apart in the internet as showing us versus telling us debate. Would I have preferred the author to show us how the friend group became close-knit? Of course, I love context, but I also feel like I didn't miss out on anything. When push came to shove in the last portion of the book, when everything sort of hit the fan, I could kind of fill in the blanks with my own imagination. But if you're one of those people that love when an author gives all the context in the world and how friends become friends or anything like that, showing versus telling, it's probably not the best option for you to read this book. Now, when everything hits the fan, it starts when Robin witnesses the contempt of the British government, when he has to translate negotiations between Canton and Britain for free trade of opium, that way they can get their silver. He witnesses the destruction opium is causing on his homeland and develops a renewed rebellious spirit towards the British. No matter what they've given him these past years, education, housing, food, money, he begins to realize it is a ploy to hang over his head to guilt him to work for the British. On the way back to Britain from Canton, Robin accidentally kills Professor Lavelle, resulting in the friends teaming up to run away and cover up the murder. The whole group joins the Hermes Society and meets a past Babel student, Anthony, where he has them rebel with peaceful means to bring about change. They do this by sending out letters and flyers to lobbyists in hopes the Parliament will change their imperialistic mindset. Griffin is on the other side of this argument, where he believes revolution will come through violence. Hit the government where it hurts, which is similar to Professor Lavelle's ideals, as we find out later that his proposition for Britain to take over Canton and allow opium-free trade was to go to war with Canton if they don't agree to their terms. Here's where things get interesting, or where I should actually say I switched from just reading a few minutes before my Pilates class to actually carving out time in my schedule to read more. The author didn't hold back on the drama in this last half. We witnessed Letty's betrayal to not only the Hermes Society, but to her friends. She gives away the location of the Hermes Society, which ends up with Rainey being killed and Victor and Robin are taken into custody. There, they are tortured for information on the Hermes Society before Griffin comes to rescue them. Griffin dies during this rescue attempt. The pacing picks up so quickly during the last half, you almost have whiplash of what you're supposed to feel at each turn. The book ends with Victor and Robin leading a strike at Babel, which leads to the country essentially breaking down because without Babel renewing the silver and keeping it active, society falters. The British government does not back down though, or give in to demands, which leads to the ultimate sacrifice of Robin, along with some other characters, creating a chain reaction of the silver to explode. Babel tackles heavy topics like racism, assimilation, imperialism. I guess the theme I left with a big impression on is the question of, is violence the only way to bring about drastic change? Essentially revolution. If I were put in a position where I was given everything I needed, like Robin, would I choose his same path and fight for a country I had not lived in for years? Do I recommend Babel? Regardless of the slow and steady beginning half of the book, if you're craving a thought-provoking read that challenges your viewpoint on the world and how to fix what you see wrong with the world, definitely give it a try. Though, don't expect answers on what is the right way to bring about change, because this book didn't even have a tied up in a bow ending, which would be the reason why I wouldn't recommend this book. This is a book that is truly here to bring about conversation, whether it be about imperialism, language, assimilation, racism, sexism. Oh my goodness, the topics are endless in this book. It's not what I would call a light read on the beach, have fun reading type book. This is truly a book I could see being picked apart in a literary class or even a book club. And at that, I think I've given all my thoughts on what I think of the book, Babel by RF Kuang. If you have a book recommendation for my next book review, list it in the comments below. Or if you read the book Babel, what are some of the main points you took away? Until next time, remember you can always find me here, your friendly casual gamer, book dragon, and cozy activity lover. With so many hobbies and so little time, let's make every moment count together. See you next time!